Twilight Imperium is a big, complex game, and learning it can feel overwhelming. I've played a lot of Twilight Imperium and taught it to many new players, and in this video, I'm going to give you a thorough, in-depth rules overview of Twilight Imperium 4th edition. We'll walk through how the game works, how the turn flows, and how the most important actions actually resolve, with definitive examples and practical strategy tips along the way. Hey everyone, my name is Clarence and welcome to the Victory Track. In this video, we're going to do a full in-depth walkthrough of Twilight Imperium 4th edition, covering the rules, the flow of the game, and the interactions that matter most. I'll explain how each phase works, break down the core mechanics in detail, and use concrete examples to show how things actually play out on the board. And along the way, I'll also point out strategy considerations so you understand not just what the rules are, but why they matter. We'll skip the physical setup of the game and focus instead on how Twilight Imperium actually plays once the game begins. At the end of the video, I'll play a song that I wrote called Tactical Time in Twilight. It's a fun way to lock in the flow of the tactical action. And yeah, it's also on Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, TikTok, Instagram, Amazon Music, and pretty much anywhere else you can stream music. Save it and blast it at your next game night. Now, before we talk rules, let's talk story and goal. You see, a long time ago, the Lazax Empire ruled the galaxy from the Mecatol Rex planet. The Lazax Empire was in power for thousands of years, and eventually the other factions overthrew them, wiped them out, and left the capital in ruins. The galaxy collapsed into centuries of war, known as the Twilight Wars, with no clear winner. Now that the dust has settled, your faction is rising, expanding, and competing to become the new ruler of the galaxy. In Twilight Imperium, you win by being the first player to reach 10 victory points. Most of your points will come from scoring objectives. Here's the one thing to remember right now. Each round, you are usually trying to score one public objective and ideally one secret objective. If you can do that consistently, you are on pace to win. Here's an example of a public objective. Expand borders. Control 6 planets in non-home systems. We can tell from the card that this public objective is worth 1 point. At the start of the game, there will only be 2 Stage 1 public objectives available to be scored, and at the end of each round, the speaker will reveal a new objective. Most scoring happens in the status phase at the end of the round, and we will cover that when we get there. Now that you know what winning looks like, let us walk through how a round flows and what you actually do on your turn to score those points. Each round in a game of Twilight Imperium is comprised of 3 main phases: the strategy phase, the action phase, and the status phase. A 4th phase, called the agenda phase, becomes active once someone takes control of Mecatol Rex. The first phase is the strategy phase. Starting with the speaker and going clockwise, each player drafts 1 of 8 strategy cards for the round. These cards do 2 things. Number 1, they determine the player turn order for the round by the number that's on the card. The player that picks the lowest numbered strategy will go first, and so on. Number 2, they grant you a powerful ability you can use once during the round. Some of these strategy cards are the only way you can do certain things in the game, like this construction strategy card, for example, which allows you to build 2 structures. Each card has a primary ability for the player who chose it, and a secondary ability that other players may optionally use when the card is played. Having the opportunity to choose a strategy card first is very strong. This is one of the many reasons having the speaker token is really good. Since draft picks go clockwise, starting with the speaker, the player sitting immediately to the right of the speaker will always pick last, which is a major disadvantage. So if you are that player, look to take the speaker token as soon as possible. You can do this with the politics strategy card. It allows you to give the speaker to any other player, yourself included of course, and get to draw action cards, which we'll see later. For this example, you can also see the secondary ability which each other player may optionally take after you have resolved the primary ability. Once each player has drafted their strategy card, the turn order is established, and the strategy cards that were not chosen this round get a trade good put on it, enticing the players to pick it for the next strategy phase. Going over each strategy card now isn't going to be efficient, so I will bring up the other 7 when they make the most sense. Next up is the action phase, which is where most of the game happens. Starting with the player with the lowest numbered strategy card, players take turns performing one action or passing. The next player to go is the one with the next lowest strategy card, and so on. Play continues in the action phase until everyone has passed for the round. On your turn, you do one action and then your turn is over. There are 3 types of actions, which I'll go over right now. The first type of action is a component action. This is any card or piece of cardboard that has the word action with the colon right next to it. Here's an example of a component action from an action card. It says, action, deploy 3 infantry units onto a planet you control. Or check out the Yssarl's faction ability. It's called Stall Tactics, and it says, action, discard 1 action card from your hand. You resolve the action, and then your turn ends. Simple as that. So this is going to be a more advanced tip and is not actually part of the rules of the game, but component actions are especially useful when you want to stall. Stalling means you take a low commitment action now so you can delay a big move later on in the round. For example, if you rush something like taking over Mecatol Rex early in the round, you give every other player at the table time to respond. If you stall first, other players are going to be forced to do their actions, play their cards, and sometimes even pass. Then, when you finally make your big move, fewer responses are going to be available from the table. So that's the real value of component actions. Use them to control timing at the table whenever you can. So we just went over the first type of action, which is called the component action. The second type of action is a strategic action. This is when you use your strategy card ability that you drafted earlier in the strategy phase. You resolve the primary ability, then other players may resolve the secondary ability in seating order going clockwise from the active player. Once used, the card is flipped face down and cannot be used again this round. You shall not pass for the round until you have used your strategic action. This means that even if another player drafts the strategy card that you wanted, you'll still have a chance to use a weaker version of its effect. This will become clearer as we walk through the strategy cards throughout the video. And now the third and by far the most important type of action is the tactical action. Before we talk about tactical actions, we need to look at the command sheet. Command tokens drive almost everything that you do in this game. There's a lot of moving parts here, so let's head over to the table. All right, so let's get into it. So first, you'll have a faction sheet right here, which lists out all of the units that you can play with, their cost and their combat values, and you'll see all about that later on. Then in this section here, you've got your faction abilities that are specific to your faction. Really cool stuff. And then the maximum number of commodities that you can hold on to. So this is your faction sheet. And then on the back side, you've got a whole lot of lore that you can read through. And then you've also got your starting technology and starting units. So then let's get into this command sheet, which is right here. Most of the time, it's going to be tucked under your faction sheet because you've got this really nice quick reference section here that you can refer to throughout the game, where here at the top, we can see the types of actions that are available to do during the action phase, which we're already diving into. And then all of the steps for a tactical action, which we're also about to get into. At the end, you've got the status phase here, which you can follow along with whoever's driving in the game. So make sure we don't forget any steps. And then you've got your anomalies over here. The anomalies are going to be these system tiles that have red arrows in the corner. And essentially, that just means that there's some kind of special rule with it. So for example, this is a supernova here. And if I look at my supernova rule over here, it says ships cannot move through or into supernovas, right?
So when it comes up in the game, just look at the anomaly rules and go from there. Now, your command sheet. So this is what your command sheet is going to look like at the start of the game. You're going to have command tokens, which are these little triangular cardboard tokens that match your faction's icon, right? And you're going to have 3 specifically in your tactic pool, 3 in your fleet pool, and 2 in your strategy pool. Everyone's going to start like this. And wherever they are on your command sheet, they're going to have a different effect, which I'm going to start getting into here now. So first, you have the tactic pool, which holds command tokens for you that you spend while doing a tactical action. And the very first step of doing a tactical action is using a command token from your tactic pool and placing it out onto the board. So if you don't have any command tokens in your tactic pool, then you cannot do a tactical action. Next up, we have our fleet pool right here. And right now it has 3 command tokens in it. They're the same ones. It's just the ones that are in your fleet pool are going to be flipped over like this so that you can easily tell in case they get bumped later which tokens are in which pool, right? So these are the same types of command tokens. Your fleet pool is going to determine how many non-fighter ships you are allowed to have in any systems on the map. So here, these little guys here, these are fighters, right? So these do not count towards our fleet limit in our fleet pool, but every other ship in the game will. So in this system here, you can see I've got 1, 2, 3 non-fighter ships, and in my fleet pool, I've got 1, 2, 3 command tokens. So I'm good. Now, you'll want to keep an eye on other players' fleet pool because throughout the game, you're going to have some effects that say that you may redistribute tokens on your command sheet. And essentially, you have complete freedom to move tokens around on your command sheet from one section to another however you want. And one thing that can happen, which is pretty common in the early game, is people are going to take a command token out of their fleet pool and put it into their strategy pool or their tactical pool, depending on what they're looking to do. Now, if I ever have more non-fighter ships in a system than I have command tokens in my fleet pool, then I need to remove ships from every system where that's the case until I have 2 in this case, right? So I would have to remove a ship from this system here. Make sure you keep an eye on this and plan ahead. Now, of course, if you get 4 or 5 command tokens into your fleet pool, you can have that many more non-fighter ships in any given system, which is going to be really good for when you want to go battle with other players, right? And then finally, you've got tokens in your strategy pool, and these are going to be used for following up on other players' strategy cards here. Remember, when you do a strategy action, you are resolving the primary ability for yourself, but then every other player at the table is going to have the chance to resolve the secondary ability. And most of these are going to require you to spend 1 token from your strategy pool in order to do that secondary ability. And what that looks like is you taking one of these tokens and spending it, returning it back to your supply. So having command tokens in your strategy pool is really good, especially for some of these strategy cards that you want to make sure you're able to do. And then lastly, you've got a little section here on the bottom for your trade goods, and this is where they go. These tokens here are trade goods. On the flip side, you have commodities, so the commodities go here, the trade goods go there.
Now that we've learned how important it is to manage your command tokens, I want to show you the Leadership Strategy card. The Leadership Strategy card is the best way to gain command tokens. If you have it, you can get 3 command tokens and spend any amount of influence to gain 1 command token for every 3 influence that you spent. If you are resolving the secondary ability, you will need to spend influence to get any command tokens, though you won't have to spend a command token from your strategy pool, which is nice. Now, I'll explain what influence is and how we spend it later on in the video. But to recap, command tokens are your action economy. The more you have, the more tactical actions you can take, the larger your fleets can be, and the more value you can get from other players' strategy cards.
If there's one thing you need to take away from this video, it's how to perform a tactical action. This is a fantastic mechanic that's unique to Twilight Imperium. With the one tactical action, you will move ships into a system, battle other players' ships that are there, invade the planets, and produce new units all in one action. So if this sounds like a lot, it is, but don't worry, you'll almost never have to do all of the steps in a tactical action, and it becomes very intuitive once you get to know it. To take a tactical action, you first activate a system. Take a token from your tactical pool and place it in a system that doesn't already contain one of your tokens. That system is now the active system. You may activate systems with enemy ships, or planets, or even other players' command tokens, just not one that already contains one of your command tokens. Next, you may move ships into the active system. This is one of the biggest mental shifts in Twilight Imperium. In many strategy games, you activate a system or a location or a tile, and you move pieces out of it. But in Twilight Imperium, it works the opposite way. The system that you activate is the destination. All the ships you move must end their movement there, and the only restriction is your fleet pool limit once they arrive. Your ships may only move from systems that do not already have one of your command tokens. Once you place a token in a system, that system is basically locked for you for the rest of the round. You can't activate it again, so you won't be moving ships out of it or producing there with another tactical action. But other players can still activate that system and move in, which means you can still end up fighting there just as the defender. Now, the Warfare strategy card is an interesting one, and it lets you perform a tactical action in any system without placing a command token, allowing you to move your fleet twice in a round and take over multiple systems. So keep this one in mind if you want to go on a rampage. You can then redistribute command tokens on your sheet however you'd like. The ships that you move must end in the active system. If they can't do that, then they can't move at all. How far a ship can move on the map is determined by its move value on your faction sheet. Ships cannot move through systems that have other enemy ships, and there are anomalies on the maps that prevent your ships from moving into them. These have red arrows in the corner of the tile, and their effects are all listed on your reference sheet. There are also wormholes on the map labeled Alpha and Beta. The systems that each have a matching wormhole count as being adjacent to each other, which is really fun. Units with a capacity value may move any number of fighters, infantry, and mechs equal to their capacity value on your faction sheet. You can pick them up along the way from planets and systems that they move through, as long as they are not in a system with one of your command tokens. So that covers movement at a high level, and we'll dive into some meatier examples later on in the video. Let's take a look at the Diplomacy strategy card. With it, you force every other player to put one of their command tokens in a system that's not Mecatol Rex. This is a powerful defensive effect because it forces players to lock a system with one of their command tokens, which means they can't activate that system later on in the round. They can't activate it, so they can't move into it. The big exception to this, though, is the Warfare strategy card, because it allows you to perform a tactical action without putting a token down. You'll also get to ready 2 planet cards, and other players will get the chance to spend 1 command token from their strategy pool to ready 2 exhausted planets that they control. After that movement step, we move on to the Space Cannon offense step. This is where the Space Cannon ability is triggered on any units in the active system. By default, every faction's planetary defense system, or PDS, has the Space Cannon ability. These PDS units are structures that are built onto planets. Now, thematically, imagine long-range space artillery firing from both sides before the main battle starts. This is what the Space Cannon step represents. Each player rolls 1 die for each unit they have with the Space Cannon in the active system. If you don't have a unit with this ability, then you don't roll anything. The number that you need to score a hit comes from the unit's Space Cannon ability text itself. For example, if a unit has Space Cannon 6, then you would roll one 10-sided die looking for a 6 or higher to score a hit against the enemy ships in the active system. If there's a parentheses after the number, for example, parentheses ×2, it means that you get to roll 2 dice instead of the 1. This applies to many other abilities in the game, so make sure you keep that in mind. Now, technically, the Space Cannon step is still a part of the overall movement step, which means you cannot reroll Space Cannon dice with abilities that affect combat rolls, for example. So that's the Space Cannon offense step. And before we move on, I want to highlight the next strategy card, which is Construction. So the Construction strategy card is the primary way that you build structures. It's going to allow you to place 2 structures onto planets you control, or produce from one of your space docks and build 1 structure. There are only 2 structures in the game. There's the PDS unit, which we just went over, and space docks, which allow you to produce new units, which we're going to see later on. Each planet can have a maximum of 2 PDS structures and 1 space dock built on it. Other players can then spend a command token from their strategy pool to build 1 structure. Space Cannon is resolved. We move on to space combat. Let's quickly summarize space combat before getting deep into the details. Combat will resolve in rounds until there's only 1 player ships remaining in the active system. So either 1 player ships are going to be completely destroyed, or 1 player ships retreat to another system, but at the end of space combat, there should only be 1 player ships in the system left over. For the combat round, there is the Anti-Fighter Barrage step that triggers any units with the Anti-Fighter Barrage ability that targets only enemy fighters. Once the Anti-Fighter Barrage step is done, the combat round then begins. First, either player may declare a retreat, and it doesn't happen yet, it's only declaring the retreat at this point. Second, players simultaneously make combat rolls with each of their ships, rolling 1 10-sided dice looking to meet or exceed that ship's combat value. Third, the players will assign hits produced by their opponent to their own ships. Each ship can take 1 hit before being destroyed. Fourth, any player that declared a retreat earlier may now retreat. After these 4 steps, if there are still 2 player ships in the system, then another round of combat will start. Like I mentioned, space combat officially begins with the Anti-Fighter Barrage step, which activates units that have the Anti-Fighter Barrage ability. Thematically, you want to picture artillery fire having already gone off in the Space Cannon step, and now the fleets are getting closer to each other. At this point, ships will fire a barrage of torpedoes aimed specifically at enemy fighters. Now, it's important to remember that this step only happens once in the first round of combat. For each unit that players have with the ability, they grab a number of dice in the parentheses of that unit's ability, then roll each dice looking for the first number or higher. This functionally works the same as the Space Cannon ability, except these hits can only be assigned to fighters. And of course, you can expect certain factions to have wickedly strong anti-fighter barrages, like this Clan of Sar flagship that has anti-fighter barrage 6 × 4, which means that 1 ship will get to roll 4 dice, looking for a 6 or higher to score hits. With the first and only anti-fighter barrage step done, now it's time for the space combat round to begin. From here on out, space combat is basically a loop. You declare retreats, roll your hits, assign the hits, then retreat if it was declared. Rinse, wash, repeat until someone's gone. Starting with the defender, either player may declare a retreat. Declaring a retreat does not move ships yet. It only commits you to retreating after this combat round is resolved. In order to be able to declare a retreat, you must actually have a system available to retreat to. That is an adjacent system that either has a planet you control or one of more ships that are under your control. If you have that, then you can declare a retreat. Otherwise, you can't do it. If you're the defender and you want to retreat with ground forces that are currently on your planets, it's at this point that you may move them into the space area with units that have capacity. Otherwise, when the retreat actually happens, the ground forces left on planets will not go with the ships that retreat. So after declaring retreats, if any, it's time to make combat rolls. And this is the fun part. Thematically, at this point, our fleets are in range and are engaged in full combat. Every ship is firing its weapons and it's all-out mayhem. Each player simultaneously rolls 1 dice for each of their ships in the active system, including fighters. Each roll for each ship must meet or exceed that ship's combat value. You can roll ships with the same combat value together since they are all looking for the same number. Ground units, which are infantry and mechs, do not roll at this step. When assigning hits in space combat, you almost always want to remove your cheaper units first. Fighters are usually the best choice for this. That's why fighters are pretty amazing. Even though it's tough to get hits with them because they only hit on a 9 or a 10, the value is the extra damage they allow you to soak up before destroying your larger and more expensive ships. After assigning hits from our opponent, we move on to the retreat step. Essentially, it's at this time that the retreat either player declared at the start of the round happens. You can retreat into a system that already has one of your command tokens in it, but if it doesn't already have one, then you must place a command token from your supply into that system, not from your command sheet. And that's how you retreat. After the retreat step, we move on to the end of the space combat step. If both players still have some ships in the system at this point because there were no retreats and ships on both sides survived, then you'll start a new combat round at the announced retreat step. Remember that you do not do space cannon offense or the anti-fighter barrage again. Combat in Twilight Imperium is exciting and is resolved to the bitter end. Either you wipe out your opponent's ships completely or someone retreats. One thing you should absolutely keep in mind are the action cards you will draw into at various points in the game. These offer all kinds of different abilities, but there are a ton of great ones that you use specifically during space combat. For example, this direct hit action card, which you use after your opponent uses their sustained damage ability on a ship, you just get to destroy it flat out, and it's a fun one to surprise your opponent with. You've got Intercept, which you use after an opponent declares a retreat, and it prevents them from actually being able to retreat this combat round. There's Shield Holding, which allows you to cancel up to 2 hits before you assign them to your ships. And Courageous to the End is super thematic. After one of your ships is destroyed during a space combat, you roll 2 dice, and for each result equal to or greater than that ship's combat value, your opponent must choose and destroy one of their ships. Skilled Retreat lets you retreat instantly at the start of the combat round into any system that does not contain any other player's ships. There are also technologies that you can research in the game that can give you the upper hand. There's one that I want to call out that's called Assault Cannon. Now, this technology requires significant investment before you can research it, but if you are wanting to play aggressive on the map, it's a must-have. At the start of a space combat that contains 3 or more of your non-fighter ships, your opponent must destroy one of their non-fighter ships. Ouch. And this is a good time to talk about the technology strategy card. Each player has a deck of technology cards in their player color. You're allowed to look through your entire technology deck at any time, especially during other players' turns, and that's when you should really do that. Planning your technology path early matters a lot. During setup, your faction may start with some technologies already researched. Some factions begin the game with multiple technologies. Some start with only one, and a few, like the Sardak Nor, start with no technology at all. Whatever your faction starts with, those technologies begin the game face up in front of you, and their effects are active immediately for the whole game. Let's look at a simple example. Anti-mass deflectors is a basic blue tech that allows your ships to move through asteroid fields, and it also makes enemy space cannon fire slightly less effective against your units. This tech has no prerequisites, so it can be researched right away. Now compare that to Gravity Drive. This is also a blue tech, but it has a prerequisite, one blue tech symbol. You'll always see these prerequisite symbols in the bottom left corner of a technology card. When you research anti-mass deflectors, you gain one blue text symbol. That symbol now counts towards meeting future prerequisites, which means anti-mass deflectors unlocks gravity drive. In general, technology prerequisites can be met in two ways: from text that you've already researched, or from planets with technology specialties. Some planets have a colored text symbol printed on them. When researching a tech, you may exhaust or flip one of those planets to temporarily count its symbol towards the prerequisite. There are also unit upgrade technologies that, instead of giving you a passive ability, these permanently upgrade a specific unit on your faction sheet, such as your carriers, your dreadnoughts, or fighters. Your faction sheet shows exactly which stats improve and which technology symbols are required. Unit upgrades are researched the same way as any other technology and follow the same prerequisite rules. The key idea to remember is this: technologies unlock other technologies. Early choices shape what options you'll have later in the game, so planning your tech path ahead of time is a big part of playing Twilight Imperium well. So how do you actually research techs? Well, that's done through the technology strategy card. If you pick the technology strategy card, when you perform your strategic action, you may immediately research one technology. If you want to research a second technology at the same time, you may do so by spending 6 resources. Other players will have the chance to spend 1 command token from their strategy pool and 4 resources to research a technology. So whether you pick the card or you're using the secondary, technology research is always tied to the technology strategy card and happens during the action phase. We just resolved space combat and covered the technology strategy card. Now we're going to move on to the invasion step. The invasion step only happens if the active player still has remaining ships in the system and won space combat. Now, before we get into the details, let's summarize the invasion step. First, the player will bombard enemy units that are left on planets from ships with the bombard ability. Second, they will send ground forces that are being carried in space down to the system's planets. And third, enemy planetary defense system units on planets will use the space cannon again on the invading ground forces that were committed. Fourth, the ground units battle to the death on the planets. And fifth, control of the planet is established. And that's the invasion step at a high level. Let's get into the details. The first step of invasion is bombardment. Similar to the space cannon and anti-fighter barrage ability we looked at earlier, this step is tied directly to units that have the bombardment ability, and this is when they trigger. If there are multiple planets that can be bombarded, then you must choose which planet each unit is going to bombard. The hits produced by the bombardment ability can only be assigned to enemy ground forces on those planets. By default, every faction's dreadnought has bombardment 5, which means each dreadnought rolls 1 dice, looking for a 5 or better to score a hit. Like the other abilities we looked at earlier though, there are some really nasty bombardment upgrades in the game. Let's take a look at the War Sun. It has bombardment 3 times 3, which means it's going to roll 3 dice, looking for a 3 or higher for each. This is really strong, but on top of that, it makes enemy units in the system lose their planetary shield ability. Remember the PDS we looked at earlier? Well, they have this ability which prevents ground forces on the planet that the PDS is on from being bombarded. But War Suns ignore that rule completely. Once all your units with the bombardment ability have been rolled and hits have been assigned, we move on to the commit ground forces step. This is where your carriers unleash their cargo onto whatever planet you choose in the active system. Take any of your ground forces that are in your space area with your ships and put them on any of the planets in the active system. Simple as that. Once you have committed your ground forces to invade a planet, the next step is the space cannon defense step. This only happens if ground forces are committed to a planet with units that have the space cannon ability, such as a PDS or maybe even a mech with the space cannon ability. Resolve each planet where this is the case one at a time. The hits produced from the space cannon ability can only be assigned to those ground forces that were committed to the planet. After the space cannon hits have been assigned, it's time to move on to ground combat. The invaders have landed on the planet and are trying to eliminate the defenders in order to gain control of the planet. Now, ground combat is not as complicated as space combat. You make combat rolls and assign hits the same way as in the space combat. Each player is going to repeat these two steps over and over again until there's only one player's units left on the planet. Now that the dust has settled on each of the planets, there should be a clear winner. Either the attacker has wiped out the defender, or the defender has repelled the attack. The next step is to establish control, which means to make sure you gain control of the planet card if you win ground combat. If the active player has at least one ground unit on a planet, they gain control of it. They take the planet card from the defender face down. Then, if any of the planets contain structures that belong to the other player, those are now destroyed. Now that we're done with the invasion step, there's still one more step with a tactical action, and that is production. This is generally how you build new units on the board, and just like the space cannon, anti-fighter barrage, and bombardment abilities, this step is where units with the production ability can produce units. In general, only space dock structures will have the production ability, but there are some particular factions units that have the production ability as well. Now, the way production works is simple. The number in the text ability for production determines how many units that particular unit can produce. So the cost of the unit you want to produce is on the faction sheet itself under cost. So for example, the Arborec faction's infantry have production 1. That means each infantry in the entire system can produce up to 1 unit. Commonly, every faction space dock will have production X, where X means the resource number of the planet that it's on plus 2. So how do you pay for the cost of units? Well, to answer this, we're going to need to take a look at planets. Now, as you might have gathered from the video so far, each planet that's under our control on the map means that we should have a matching planet card. Each planet has 2 different values on it. In yellow, we have the resource value, which is used for building new units. And in blue, we have influence, which we spend on more abstract things like getting more command tokens with the leadership card, the number of votes that we get in the agenda phase later on, or even spending 6 influence to land on Mecatol Rex. When you want to spend resources or influence, you exhaust 1 or more planet cards and flip them over to show that you've spent them. This is why anytime we gain control of a new planet, we gain the card face down on the exhausted side. We can't spend any resources or influence from them. At the end of the round, they will refresh and you will get to flip them over to their face side and spend resources and influence from them in future rounds.
Now, one thing I didn't cover so far is the Custodian token on Mecatol Rex. In the lore of Twilight Imperium, after the Lazaks were wiped out from the galaxy, the Winarans, who were bureaucrats and diplomats of the Lazaks Empire, remained on the devastated planet to preserve its archives and maintain the Imperial city until a worthy successor could be found. To take Mecatol Rex, you must first spend 6 influence to take the Custodian token. Then you can commit ground forces to the planet just like a normal invasion. Remember, influence is the blue number on planets, not the yellow resource number. This represents your faction using political maneuvering and diplomatic pressure to convince the Custodians that you are a legit contender for the throne, rather than just an invader. You also score 1 victory point, symbolizing the galactic prestige your faction receives for being the first to successfully unlock the seat of the Empire. This point can never, ever be taken from you, even if you lose control of it later. Now with that, I want to highlight the 8th strategy card, which is Imperial. If you are the active player using the primary ability, it allows you to immediately score 1 public objective, as long as you meet its requirements. And it allows you to gain 1 victory point if you control Mecatol Rex. If you don't, then you will draw 1 secret objective instead. Other players will be able to spend 1 command token from their strategy pool to draw 1 secret objective. And remember, you can only have a maximum of 3 secret objectives that are score and or unscored. This strategy card is just oozing with victory point potential, allowing you to score a potential second public objective in one round and another victory point for controlling Mecatol Rex. And that just about wraps up the tactical action in detail, which is the most complex part about Twilight Imperium to learn. To make sure we fully understand the tactical action, I will show some frequent examples that you will run into during the game.
All right, guys, so we're just getting started with the tactical action examples. This first one here is going to cover early game expansion, which if you're a new player or a returning player, you'll be doing this a lot, right? So we've already passed the strategy phase. We've gotten our strategy card for the round, and we've moved into the action phase. And now it's our turn. In the very first round, and probably the second round, you'll be looking to expand from your corner of the galaxy here into nearby systems to take control of more planets in order to have more resources to spend, to build more units, and so on. Usually you're doing this throughout the game, but in the first or second round, you should have control of a lot more planets. The way that you take control of them is with the tactical action, which is what we're showing off right now. So the first thing you kind of want to think about is how are you going to get your infantry or your ground forces onto planets, right? The thing that you need to look out for is going to be the capacity value of your starting units. So as the Titans of Ol, we actually don't start with any carriers. We have 2 cruisers and 1 dreadnought, 3 infantry on the planet, and a couple fighters with our space dock, right? So I don't have any carriers right now. And if I look at my faction sheet, I've got a special cruiser called the Saturn engine, which has a capacity value of 1, which is really awesome. And then my normal dreadnought has got a capacity value of 1 as well. That means we have enough capacity for these 3 infantry to expand and take control of other planets. And if you remember, you only need 1 infantry on a planet to gain control of it. So you can start thinking about it that way. I've also got a secret objective that says seize an icon, control a legendary planet. A legendary planet is any planet that's got this purple circle right there on the planet tile itself, right? So this is going to be a very sweet target for me to go after right away. I'm going to grab a command token from my tactical pool, and I'm going to place it in the system that I want to go into. Now, one thing to look at right now is that this is an anomaly because of the red arrows in the corner, and we can see from the picture that it's an asteroid field. Normally, you can't move into asteroid fields, but lucky for us, the Titans of Ul start with this tech, which allows us to move into asteroid fields. So that's awesome. So we can go in there right away. I've got my command token from my tactics pool, and I've put it in the system. I can do that because I don't already have a token there. So that's great. The next step is to move ships. So what I want is at least 1 infantry to land on this planet. What I'll do is I'll take a cruiser, move it into here, and with it, it's going to bring 1 of these infantry. Note that the infantry is still in space at this point, but we're going to get to the next step pretty naturally here. After movement, we would do space cannon, but this cruiser doesn't have space cannon, and there's no enemy forces in this system. So we just blow right past a lot of these steps. The space cannon step, we don't do. The space combat step, we don't do. And we skip right through invasion. And the very first step of invasion is bombardment. And again, there's nothing to bombard here, and my ship cannot bombard. So we skip right over that as well. And now we go to the commit ground forces step, which is where I take my infantry and put it on the planet. I commit it to it. And after that, there would be the space cannon defense step and the ground combat step, but we skip right over that, and now we establish control, which basically means, hey, I'm the only player here with a ground force on this planet, so I gain control of the card. And this is what it looks like. All right, now remember, whenever you gain control of a planet and you get the card, you get it face down on this side, and that just means that you can't spend it this turn for resources and other things. Since this is a legendary planet because it's purple, we're also going to get a cool legendary planet ability card, which if you want to see this one, you can pause the video and look at that. Now that we gained our planet card face down, next, if we're playing with the Prophecy of Kings expansion, which I hope you are, you have to explore the planet, which adds a really fun, quick mechanic to the game. So we look at the planet type, which is right here, and there's green, blue, and red. Green means industrial, red means hazardous, and blue, like this one right here, means cultural. So what we're going to do is draw a card from that planet's type exploration deck, which would be this one right here, the industrial deck. So I'm going to grab one of those, and you show it to everyone at the table and resolve it immediately. This one says you may gain one commodity, or you may spend one trade good or one commodity to place a mech from your reinforcement on this planet. Cool. So right now, it's the start of the game. I do not have any commodities. You don't start the game with any commodities or trade goods. At this point, the only thing I can do right now is grab a commodity. So I'll grab a token from the supply and put it right here in my commodities bin. Note that the gray ones are commodities, the yellow ones are trade goods. We gained our commodity, and that's our tactical action. All right, so it's our turn again in the action phase, and we want to keep expanding. So at this point, we have 2 tokens left in our tactic pool. So I think we'll do another tactical action. So what I'm going to do is grab a token from my tactical pool and put it into this system right here. Now I can move ships into it, grabbing any ground forces up to the capacity. So that's going to be one of my guys here. We don't actually have to go through all the steps because we know that there's no enemy here. So I'm just going to put my guy on the planet, and then I'm going to gain control of the planet card, which is right here. Again, face down, put it with my other ones. And then we're going to explore it. So we're going to draw another industrial exploration card. And look at that. We drew the same exact card. So you may gain a commodity, or you may spend one trade good or one commodity to place a mech from your reinforcements on this planet. Well, lucky for us, we already got a commodity here. So I think I'll go ahead and spend that, grabbing it over here. And then I will grab a mech from my reinforcements, which looks like this, and I will put it on the planet, which we just took over right there. And now it's our turn once again. So we've expanded to 2 planets already, which is really nice, and gotten some planet cards, but we've only got 1 tactical token left, okay? Our strategy card was the construction card, so we're not going to be able to gain more command tokens with this. And we have 1 ready planet, which is our home planet of Elysium. Now, I think what I would do in this situation is I would start looking to build more units in the system here. Now, whether you would have moved the Dreadnought or the cruisers, you know, that's a different topic. But what you could do with your last tactical pool is just activate your home system. And this is going to be another common scenario that you're going to run into, which is, hey, I just want to produce some more units. So I'm going to do a tactical action here in my home system, right? And I don't want to move any ships into it. So we skip right over that. We don't do space cannon. We don't do space combat, no ground combat, no invasion. We just move to the last step, which is production. And that's what I'm after. So I've got 4 production on this planet. And then this space dock gives me 2 more, so I can produce up to 6 units over here. And I've got a spending power of 4 resources. Okay, so what do I actually need to build in here? Well, now I would look on my command sheet and go, all right, so now I'm looking at the cost value of all these units. And I think one thing that would be really helpful is some more infantry on the board. And if we look at the infantry, it costs us 1 resource for 2 infantry. And what you want to do when you're producing normally is just kind of get everything in one place, right? So I'm going to get 2 infantry, and that's going to cost me 1. And I've got 3 more to spend. Now, what I could do is go after another cruiser. Or maybe I could build a carrier over here, and that'll be 3. So let's say I'm going to grab a carrier. All right, maybe not the most meta move, but these are the units that I would like to produce right here, right? So my production limit for this space dock is going to be, once again, the resource value of the planet, which is 4 plus 2, so I can produce up to 6 units. And this is what I'm producing, 3 different units, right? So even though you pay 1 resource for 2 infantry, these still count towards the amount of units you're producing, all right? So right now I'm producing 3 units, so I'm good there. Now I need to pay for the units themselves. So like we looked at, a carrier is going to cost us 3, and then our infantry is going to cost us 1. So I need to spend 4 resources, and lucky for us, we did the math right. Our home planet has 4 resources on it. So I'm going to spend those by flipping the card over. And at this point, I've paid for the units that I want to produce, and they're going to go right in the system where I am producing. Just like that. And that's our 3rd tactical action for the first game round. Alrighty, so now we're getting into the last and final example of a tactical action where we're going to play out a battle between the Embers of Muat player and the Titans of Ul. So for some reason, the Embers of Muat just had enough of the Titans. They're just way too cool looking, so they want to take over their planets and make them suffer, just like they did. So the first thing that they're going to do is grab a command token from their tactical pool and place it in the system. And it's at this point that the whole table gasps and goes crazy. And now it's time to move in units from nearby systems. And we're just going to use one of these easy fleet stands here to make that simple. These things make your life a lot easier when you're just trying to get a big battle like this going. Make sure you check out the description, where I've got my little commission link so you can help support the channel. We've activated the system. We've done our movement. We've brought in our fleet over here. Now we have a War Sun with a carrying capacity of 6, so it can bring in up to 6 small units, and it's got 4 infantry and 2 fighters, really big and scary. And now we're done with our movements. So now the next step is going to be the Space Cannon offense step. And the only unit in the active system with Space Cannon is going to be the Titans of Ul PDS unit there. So it's going to go ahead and take a shot. And this is not scripted at all. So we're just going to see what happens here. So the Titans have got a special PDS unit, which has Space Cannon 6, and that's all great. But it can also fight in ground combat. So we can see this unit is treated as both a structure and a ground force, and it has a combat value. So it's got a special thing, but the Space Cannon ability is still 6. So right away, the guys are coming into the system and the defenders are reacting. So we only have one shot here, one opportunity from the Space Cannon defense step. And we're going to go ahead and roll this red dice. Now again, Space Cannon 6 means we're looking for a 6 or higher, so let's roll it. And we actually got a 6, which means now we've created a hit that the Embers of Muat player needs to assign. So he's going to be assigning it to one of his fighters, but that's going to be important for later. So we've gone ahead and destroyed a fighter, which is really cool. And now we're going to move on to the next step, which is Space Combat. Space Combat starts with an anti-fighter barrage ability that comes from units that have it in the system. And right now, that's going to be the Titans of Ul's Destroyer. If we look over at the Titan of Ul's Destroyer, they just have a normal Destroyer 1, and we've got anti-fighter barrage 9 times 2. And we only have one destroyer in the system here, so that means we're only going to do that ability once, right? So we're going to grab 2 dice, and we're going to roll them, and this is the anti-fighter barrage step, which they've got 1 fighter remaining. So I'm looking for a 9 or higher to hopefully destroy this fighter here. And we just rolled a 10. So zeros on the dice are 10s in this game, right? So we scored 1 hit, which is excellent. And they have to assign that hit to their fighter. So now both fighters are already gone, but the Embers still have this really powerful War Sun in the system. And now we get into the very first round of space combat, which is announcing or declaring retreats or declaring bankruptcy, however you want to call it. The defender starts, right? And in this case, looking at what the defender has going on, you know, we're not going to retreat. Are you kidding? We have 3 ships and they have 1. Let's stay. And now the Embers might be considering retreating, but let's just say they want to see how it plays out. So there's not going to be any retreats declared at this step. Now, the next step is we make combat rolls, right? These happen at the same time, but we're just going to go ahead and just roll the pink players, the Titans dice first, and then we're going to do the Embers of Muat. So what happens here is we have a destroyer, we have a cruiser, and then a dreadnought, which is looking pretty good, honestly. It's looking great. They have a special cruiser, the Titans of Ul, so it's a combat value of 7. The dreadnought is 5, and then destroyer is 9. So let's just go ahead and roll the destroyer first. We're looking for a 9 or higher from the destroyer, and we're going to go ahead and roll that, and that's going to be a miss. Now we're going to do the Saturn engine, which is the cruiser, and that's looking for a 7 or higher. And that's also 5. I'm going to switch dice because this one's bad luck. And then finally, our dreadnought has got a combat value of 5, so we need a 5 or higher. And that's going to be 1 hit. So from these 3 ships right here, the Titans of Ul have managed to score 1 hit. So I'm going to leave that red dice in there just to represent that we've scored 1 hit. Now we're going to do the airships for the Embers, and we've got a War Sun in the system, which is really crazy. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at this War Sun here. All right, hopefully that looks okay, but we have a combat value of 3 with 3 of these burst icons, which means it's going to roll 3 dice out of 3 or higher, which is really good. So I'm actually going to grab 3 of those yellow dice there for the Embers. And by the way, if you like these colored dice, these are also in the description. And because we're looking for a 3 or higher for all of these, we can roll them all together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So 3 or higher. All right, so we actually managed to score 2 hits back. All right, so the Embers have scored 2 hits, and the Titans of Ul have scored 1. So now they both need to assign those hits. I can't assign the hits to these ground forces that the War Sun is carrying right now. So one thing I can look at is on my sheet here, I've got the sustained damage ability for this War Sun, which means if I were to assign a hit to the ship, I can cancel it by using the sustained damage. So I'm going to do that. And for the War Suns, it's pretty fun. You just unclip them like that. And now this is a damaged War Sun. All right. But we've canceled that hit and we can't do it again because it's now damaged. So that's good. And now we've produced 2 hits. And unfortunately, for the Titans, we're going to get rid of the destroyer. And then the dreadnought also has sustained damage. So we're going to put it on there. Now, in a real combat, you want to be careful because there's action cards that can really throw this off. Like if I had the direct hit action card right now, I would play that and destroy that dreadnought. So you might want to be careful depending on how many action cards your opponent has. But that was the 2 hits assigned. So now we've made our combat rolls and we've assigned the hits. The next step would be to actually retreat if we were going to do that. But neither player retreated. And so now we see what's left in the system, right? This system right here. We have ships from both the Titans and still a ship from the Embers of Muat. And so that means that we need to start another combat round. So think about what you would do in this situation, because this is actually a pretty close fight, but we're going to go ahead and start the next round of combat with declaring retreat. So now we're in the second round, and the Titans of Ul have to declare whether they're going to retreat first or not. And at this point, I think they want to hold their ground, and the Embers, they really have something against the Titans, so they want to stay and fight it out. So again, no retreats declared here. We're going to make our combat rolls again. This time we'll start with the Embers. So our War Sun has 3 shots on 3 ups, and this could be really devastating. And we've made all 3 hits over there, which is great for them. And so now we lost that destroyer in the system as the Titans of Ul, but we still have a cruiser that hits on a 7. And we've rolled a 9, which is really awesome. And then just to make sure, let's roll our Dreadnought as well. And our Dreadnought just makes it with a 5. So we've actually scored the maximum amount of hits from both sides here, and now we have to assign them. So unfortunately for the Ember player, he has to assign this hit to his damaged War Sun, and it is now destroyed. Also at this point, since these 4 infantry were being carried in space, and there's no longer any units with a capacity value in the system, these guys have to be removed as well, which is too bad. So we've assigned the 1 hit from the Titans of Ul. There's no more, units to assign extra hits to, so that's done. And now the Embers have produced 3 hits, and they're just going to go ahead and destroy the remaining 2 ships from the Titans of Ul. And so that is how this combat worked out. Now, if it had worked out in a way that the Embers actually won that combat, destroyed the ships and survived, it would look something like this, and we would move on to the invasion step, which is where we first do bombardment with a War Sun. Is absolutely nuts, as I've mentioned before. We've got bombardment 3 times 3. We have to assign those to 1 planet, right? Because in this case, there is a PDS with an infantry on it, and even though the PDS has the planetary shield ability, which prevents units from being bombarded, the War Sun here, his special ability is other players' units in the system lose planetary shield. So that unit basically doesn't have it anymore, and I'm free to bombard however I want. All right, so knowing that the Titans PDS is also a combat unit, even though their mechs are pretty good as well, I think I'm going to choose to bombard this Xan-hacked planet, and so that's going to be 3 times 3. All right, and we scored 3 more hits, and those 2 units can only take 1 hit each, so they are done. All right, now we've done the bombardment. The next step is to commit ground forces. So at this point, I can say, well, I'm going to commit 1 infantry here, and I'm going to commit the rest to the planet where this mech is. There we go. So now we've committed the ground forces, and unfortunately at this point, we don't have any space cannon defense because the Titans of Ul's PDS is treated like a ground force, so it can actually be bombarded, which is too bad, so sad, but no space cannon defense rule this time. And now we move on to ground combat, and this is the only planet where we have any ground combat going on. So the Embers have got 3 infantry on this planet, and their combat value is 8. You can see that right here. And then it's this infantry over there, but it's the same. And then the mech of the Titans is going to have a combat value of 6, and it also has sustained damage, which essentially means it can take 2 hits before being destroyed. So this could actually be a close fight. We're going to go ahead and roll the dice looking for 8 and above for the Embers. And unfortunately, the Embers are not quite skilled in ground combat as they are in space combat. So these are all misses. So we have no hits. And now the Titans of Ul mech is going to roll their 1 dice looking for a 6 or higher. and they rolled a 2, which means no hits have been produced. And now we start the next round of ground combat. So we do this again. Embers looking for 8s and higher. And we managed to score 2 this time, which is great. So I'm going to leave those dice in there to show that I've scored 2 hits. And now we're going to look for a 6 from the mech. And that's another miss, unfortunately. And so now we assign the hits. The first hit gets canceled by the sustained damage. So we lay it down like that. And then the second hit has to go on it. And it's now destroyed. And so at this point, we are done with the ground combat, which means we move on to the established control step, and the Embers of Muat gain these 2 planet cards under their control from the Titans of Ul player. So that was a whole round of combat, unscripted, for you. I hope you enjoyed that. Now, in summary, the tactical action may look complex at first, but once you understand the flow of it, it's very consistent. We've covered everything you can do during the action phase. On your turn, you take exactly 1 action: a component action, strategic action, or a tactical action. If you can't or don't want to, then you just pass for the round. Just remember that you cannot pass unless you've taken your strategic action. Now, once every player has passed during the action phase, the round moves into the status phase. This is the phase where points are scored and the game advances toward its end. Players score objectives in initiative order, starting with the player who has the lowest numbered strategy card. During the status phase, each player may score up to 1 public objective and up to 1 secret objective. You are never required to score both, but in practice, you should usually aim to score at least 1 public objective every round, and ideally a secret objective as well. Public objectives are shared goals that are available to everyone. Secret objectives are private goals that only you can score and remain hidden from other players until they are scored. At the top of every objective card, you will see when it can be scored. Most objectives are scored during the status phase, but there are some secret objectives that are scored during the action phase instead, and these will be clearly marked with bold red text. To score a public objective, you must meet its requirement right now during your turn in the status phase. It's not enough to have met it earlier in the round. For example, if an objective says spend 8 resources, you must spend those resources at the moment you scored the objective in the status phase. One very important rule to remember: in order to score any public objective, you must control all planets in your home system. This becomes critical in the late game because losing your home system can completely prevent you from scoring public objectives. The first 5 Stage 1 public objectives that are going to be revealed are each going to be worth 1 point, where the last 5 Stage 2 public objectives are each going to be worth 2 victory points when scored. Now, if you were going to reveal an 11th objective and there are none objectives left to reveal, then the game ends immediately and the player with the most victory points is declared the winner. In practice, games usually end earlier because a player reaches the winning point total first. If multiple players are close to winning, initiative order becomes extremely important. The game ends the moment a player reaches the winning number of points, so scoring earlier in the status phase can decide the winner. After scoring is done, the status phase continues with the cleanup. Each player draws 1 action card up to a maximum hand size of 7. The green Neural Motivator tech lets you draw 2 cards instead of 1 at this step. Then all command tokens are removed from the board and returned to each player's supply, not their command sheet. And once that's done, each player gains 2 command tokens and may redistribute tokens on their command sheet however they like. The green Hypermetabolism tech lets you gain 3 command tokens instead of the normal 2. After the players have gained their command tokens, all exhausted cards are readied, damaged ships are repaired, strategy cards return back to the supply, and once cleanup is finished, the next round begins with the strategy phase. Once Mecatol Rex is claimed, the agenda phase is added to the round, adding galactic politics and voting. All right, guys, back behind the camera again to talk you through the agenda phase here. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the agenda phase is only active in the round if a player took over Mecatol Rex. And in this example, the Ghost of Cruz player, who's also the speaker, has gotten control of Mecatol Rex as well. And that's a pretty deadly combo, but you'll see that in just a minute. Now, what is the agenda phase about? Well, at this point, someone has reclaimed the throne on Mecatol Rex, and all of the main factions from all around the galaxy, which is all the other players at the table, are meeting at Mecatol Rex to address issues going on around the galaxy and try and resolve them. So what we're doing in the game during this phase is we're going to resolve 2 agenda cards, and we are going to vote on these issues that are on the cards, resolving each one at a time. Now, our planets are going to give us our voting power, and this is why Mecatol Rex is so strong, because it has 6 influence. So Mecatol Rex on its own has 6 votes. It can contribute to an issue, whereas this one has 3, this one has 0, and this one has 2, right? So every planet has got some influence value, and this is where it's useful in the agenda phase. Now, one thing worth noting is earlier, I mentioned trade goods. They can be spent as a wild resource, both influence or resource. But during the agenda phase, you cannot spend trade goods as votes. Okay, only planets do that. At the start of the agenda phase, the speaker is going to draw the first card, and he's going to read it out loud to the rest of the table like this. This one's called Minister of Antiquities. It's a directive. We're going to elect a player. The elected player is going to gain a relic. Okay, so whoever gets the most votes towards them is going to get a relic. And I haven't talked too much about relics yet, but there are these really nice yellow cards here which give you a powerful ability. Lots of text there, but if you want to look at it, pause the video. Now, the rest of the table, starting from the left of the speaker, is going to vote on these issues. And they'll be doing that by spending or exhausting their planet cards to submit votes towards the outcome that they want. Now, they can abstain from the issue. If they want to not vote, they do not have to vote. And remember, there's going to be another agenda card to vote for. If the Arborec wants to vote 5 votes for themselves, which they can do, then they've exhausted both of their planets. So next round, they're not going to have any voting power. And I don't mean next round, at the next agenda card that we revealed, they're not going to have any voting power. So then it's going to go to the left of the Arborec player, and then it's going to come back around, eventually back to the speaker. Now, the speaker, the Ghost of Cruz, is the last player to vote. Being the last one to vote, you can make much better decisions. But not only that, if there is a tie for votes between 2 outcomes, then the speaker decides what happens. So as the speaker, what I could do is, I know that the Arborec has 5 votes for themselves here, so I'm going to spend 5 votes for myself. I'm going to spend 3 over here and 2 over here. So now it's a tie, and as the speaker, I decide the outcome, and I want to pick myself. So now the Ghost of Cruz player would get that tasty relic that I just showed, and that would go up in his play area somewhere. And that's the first agenda card resolved. We draw the next agenda card, and then the speaker will do it again. So Minister of Exploration, this time it's a law, and what we're doing is electing a player again. The elected player gains this card, and when the owner of this card gains control of a planet, they also gain 1 trade good. That's pretty good, right? This is what laws are. They're just cards that stay up in play and do their thing. These can change up the course of the game pretty strongly. So once again, it would start from the player to the left of the speaker to start voting, but the Arborec this time, they're all out of votes. They exhausted all of their planets to vote on the last issue. So too bad, so sad, right? And then go around the table again, and then back to the speaker. Once this second card here has been resolved and the law has been given to somebody now that's in play, and then that person now gets a trade good whenever they gain control of a planet, which is pretty good, I must say. The other thing that is important to know is as you are voting for an issue, which will happen a lot, you are allowed to make transactions with anyone at the table, because thematically we're all gathered at Mecatol Rex, haggling and doing politics and stuff. So that is the agenda phase. Once we're done with this, you move on to the next round at the strategy phase, right? Because in the status phase, you've gone ahead and returned all the cards, the strategy cards, back to the supply. And now it's time to draft again, starting with the speaker once more. Now, before we wrap up the agenda phase, we need to talk about transactions and deals you can make with other players during the game. During a normal turn of Twilight Imperium, the active player may negotiate up to one transaction with each of his neighbors. Now, in Twilight Imperium, neighbors are other players that have units or control a planet in adjacent systems to each other. When resolving a transaction, players can trade any amount of trade goods and or commodities. But where do these come from? Well, that would be the trade strategy card. When this card is resolved, the active player gains 3 trade goods and replenishes his commodities. Replenishing commodities means adding commodity tokens onto your faction sheet until you have a number of tokens equal to the commodity value that's on your faction sheet. The number of commodities a player has cannot exceed the commodity value that is on their faction sheet. And finally, the active player may choose other players to replenish commodities without having them spend a token from their strategy pool, which is a powerful negotiation tool. Commodities represent goods that your empire produces in excess and offers no value to you. Give commodities to another player as part of a transaction, though, and they will become trade goods for the player that you gave them to. Trade goods are valuable resources that you may spend as either a resource or influence, except when casting votes in the agenda phase. The other thing that you can use as leverage when negotiating with other players are the promissory notes. You will have 5 of these in your player color if you're playing with the Prophecy of Kings expansion. Each player cannot trade more than 1 promissory note per transaction. When a player receives a promissory note, they reveal it to everyone at the table and read it aloud. Now, going back to the agenda phase, you can freely negotiate up to 1 transaction with every player at the table, even if you're not neighbors on the board. A quick recap of the agenda phase. The speaker reveals 2 agenda cards, resolving each one at a time. Players cast votes on their desired outcomes, starting from the player to the left of the speaker and ending with the speaker, and may perform up to 1 transaction with each other player at the table when they are casting votes. After both agenda cards have been resolved, players ready their planet cards again, and the next round begins, starting at the strategy phase. So at this point, we've covered the entire round structure, starting at the strategy phase, moving on to the action phase, scoring objectives and cleaning up the board in the status phase, and ending with the agenda phase after someone has gained control of Mecatol Rex. We also covered all of the strategy cards at times when they make the most sense. The only thing left to cover are expansion-related topics. So for the Prophecy of Kings expansion, it's the first expansion released for Twilight Imperium, and I highly recommend it for your first game. Each faction will gain powerful leaders and mechs that will be on the opposite side of their command sheet. Each leader has a different rank and goes on to a specific spot in the leader sheet. We also briefly covered the exploration decks for each planet type, and there's also these frontier tokens that are going to be placed in systems without planets during setup. To explore these, you need the basic blue dark energy tap technology, but once you do, whenever you activate and move ships into a system with a frontier token, you'll explore it, removing the token from the board and drawing a card from the frontier deck. The exploration decks can all lead to some exciting events happening, such as a relic fragment being discovered by the players, which can be traded as part of transactions. And if you get 3 of these together as a component action, You can discard them to draw a powerful relic from the relic deck. Now, these relics can't be traded. Some surprising things can happen in a game of Prophecy of Kings, such as a legendary planet called Mirage that can appear in one of those systems with frontier tokens, or gamma wormholes opening up that lead to the wormhole nexus, which when someone goes into it becomes adjacent to all wormholes on the board, and the Malice legendary planet in the middle. Prophecy of Kings does not add much to the complexity and time to the game while giving the players more tools for deals. So again, I highly recommend the Prophecy of Kings expansion. Thunder's Edge is the most recent expansion that primarily gives you alternate ways to play Twilight Imperium. The Thunder's Edge planet token starts off the board and flipped over. At the end of their turn, each player can start an expedition to Thunder's Edge by paying the relevant cost of a free slot on the token, and then place the control token on it. This unlocks their faction's Breakthrough, which is a powerful new ability. The Breakthrough also allows the player to count one of their technology symbols on the Breakthrough card to count as the other, giving you more flexibility when researching tech. So once all of the expedition slots have been claimed on Thunder's Edge, the last player to put their control token on it places the Thunder's Edge planet in any system that doesn't already contain a planet, supernova, or wormhole. Then the player who claimed the most slices on the planet token gains control of Thunder's Edge, placing just one infantry on the planet for each slot in the expedition that they've claimed. If there happens to be a tie, the player who completed the expedition decides which of the tied player gets it. Whenever a player gains their Breakthrough, they'll roll a dice, and on a 0 or a 10, the fracture will just appear, and it can only be accessed by using these ingress tokens. There's some spicy legendary planets in the fracture that are furthermore defended by unknown neutral units. Taking them won't be easy, but it will be worth the reward. Now, there are some minor new additions like space stations, which are trading posts that don't inherently provide high resource or influence values, but they do increase the maximum amount of commodities that you can have, and you can perform transactions with other players that also control a space station without having to be neighbors physically on the board. And most importantly, a player can exhaust a space station that they control to convert their own commodities into trade goods. There's also a whole bunch of updated cards and components that replace some of the base game and Prophecy of King cards to balance the game better. So that's all of the expansions in a nutshell. And I didn't cover every detail about them, but it should be enough to get you guys playing. Now, before we wrap up, I want to end with something that's a little fun. The tactical action is the heart of Twilight Imperium, and it's also the part most people struggle to remember. So I turned the entire sequence into a short song called Tactical Time in Twilight. It's a quick, memorable way to reinforce everything you just learned. Let's roll it.
Set the board, check your plan. Neighbors eyeing all your land. You don't panic, you advance. Grab a command token, this is your chance. Tactical time in Twilight. Do it in order, do it just right. Step by step, watch it all fall in line. Tactical time in Twilight. From the stars to the ground you'll fight. Play it clean and you'll be doing just fine. Tactical time, tactical time. First you activate a system, drop that token, now they're listening. And then you move those ships right in from nearby systems. Let the battle begin. Now check the range, check the dice. Follow the flow, don't think twice. Tactical time in Twilight. Do it in order, do it just right. Step by step, watch it all fall in line. Tactical Tactical time. Space cannon offense, fire it for the fight. Into the night. In space combat, ship by ship, roll the dice, watch them hit. Invasion phase, now it's breaking loose. Bombardment first, if your guns are put to use, commit ground forces, send them down. Braced and ready, hit the ground in space. Cannon defense, shots from planets, last defense. Ground combat raging, to one side's cleared. Establish control, plant your flag on the field. Now prediction, build what you can afford. Ships and troops in that system, lock your gains on the board. Tactical time in Twilight. Hey, do it in order, do it just right. Step by step, watch them all fall in line. Tactical time in Twilight. Hey, from the stars to the ground you fight. Hey, hey, hey. Play it clean and you'll be doing just fine. Play it clean and you'll be doing just fine. Tactical time. Tactical time. Tactical time. Hey. Tactical time. Tactical time. Tactical time in Twilight. Hey.
All right, well, I hope you enjoyed the song. That's Twilight Imperium. The rules are big, but the gameplay loop is simple once you see it. Strategy phase sets the order and gives you the tools. Action phase is where you take systems and build your position on the board. The status phase is where you actually win the game by scoring objectives. And once Mecatol Rex is taken, the agenda phase turns the whole table into a larger negotiation. If you want to play the game well and win, keep this mindset. Every round, have a plan for one public objective and one secret objective. Protect your home system so that you can actually score. Position yourself to gain control of Mecatol Rex and use the Imperial strategy card with it. Do not burn through all of your command tokens early unless you have a way to refill them. Use negotiation with other players to solve problems and use force as a last resort. Have a tech path in mind and commit to it. Use your action cards. Don't forget about those. As always, do not hesitate to leave a question or comment. I will get back to you. If you're playing your first game soon, tell me which faction you're choosing. I hope this video added a ton of value for you and made you feel confident to sit down and play a game of TI. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time on the victory track.
Tactical time. Yeah. Set the board. Check your plan. Neighbors eyeing all your land. You don't panic. You advance. Grab a command token. This is your chance. Tactical time in Twilight. Do it in order. Do it just right. Step by step, watch it all fall in line. Tactical time in Twilight. From the stars to the ground you fight. Play it clean, you'll be doing just fine. Tactical time. Yeah. First you activate a system. Yeah. Drop that token, now they listen. Yeah.